He tracked the masked Apache rider through the red canyons of the frontier only to freeze when the helmet fell and revealed a woman. Now Cole Hart must decide whether to obey the law or protect the very outlaw he was paid to kill. "Put down the knife, or they'll kill us both," she warned, breath ragged behind the bronze mask. "I was sent to bring you in," Cole said, voice trembling between duty and something he didn't yet understand. "But damn it, I think you're right about what's been stolen." The air between them crackled like gunpowder. In that moment, the dust, the law, and the blood that marked their paths all blurred into one impossible choice. A man who had spent his life chasing bounties now stood face to face with the first person who made him question why. And before the sun set on that canyon, both hunter and hunted would find themselves running from the same enemy, bound together by survival, guilt, and the violent truth of what justice really meant on stolen land. The town of Caldera sat at the edge of nowhere, a brittle outpost gnawed by wind and sand. Buildings leaned like tired men, their paint scoured off by years of dust storms. The saloon's piano hadn't played in months, and the church bell had cracked one winter and never been mended. Out here, law came on horseback and left in a coffin. Cole Hart was one of the few who rode for it. A tracker, once a soldier, always alone. The townsfolk called him a drifter with a badge borrowed from whoever paid best. He called himself practical. The war had taught him that belief was a luxury, and morality was a story men told themselves to sleep better at night. When Caldera's council summoned him to their cramped office, the air was thick with tobacco and cheap whiskey. They spoke of a masked Apache raider who'd been hijacking supply wagons, food, medicine, gunpowder. No killings, just precision and vanishing tracks. Every attempt to stop the thief had failed. They wanted Cole to end it. Dead or alive, they'd said, but their eyes had already chosen. Cole took the job without a word. It wasn't conscience or justice that drove him, it was motion. The trail was all he had left that still made sense. 3 days later, he was riding north into Apache country, where the land itself seemed to whisper warnings. The first signs came like ghosts, hoofprints too deliberate, campfires burned too clean. Whoever this masked rider was, they knew how to erase their passage. Cole read the earth like scripture. A bent twig here, a stone turned wrong there. Each detail whispered of training, discipline, purpose. By the second morning, he found what he'd been waiting for. A campsite tucked beneath a ridge of red shale. The ashes were still warm. One person. No escort, no herd, no allies. That alone told him more than any rumor this wasn't a bandit. It was a mission. Cole knelt, fingertips tracing the soft print of bare feet near the fire. Lighter than a man's, but sure, balanced. His pulse quickened. "You're alone," he murmured. "But you know what you're doing." At sunset, he caught sight of the figure riding along the canyon edge like a spirit of the dust. Bronze mask glinting against the dying light, movements too fluid to be burdened by armor or fear. Cole stayed downwind, trailing her across the ridge until she reached the wagon convoy below. In the time it took him to blink, she struck swift, silent, merciless. 3 guards disarmed, not dead. The masked rider took only what could be carried. Food, medicine, bandages. Then she vanished into the rocks, as if the desert had swallowed her whole. Cole stared after her, breath shallow. This wasn't thievery. It was strategy, maybe even mercy. But the law didn't care about mercy, and neither, he reminded himself, did he. That night, as campfire shadows trembled across his face, Cole decided he'd force a meeting. Tomorrow, the canyon would close in on both of them. By dawn, Cole had chosen his battleground, a narrow stretch of canyon where the walls rose like old gods, scarred by centuries of wind. The path was tight enough to funnel any rider straight into his sights. He tied his horse behind a jut of rock and waited. The sun climbed, baking the stone red. Hours passed. Then came the sound hoofbeats, steady, measured, not hurried, confident. Cole's heartbeat found the rhythm of that approach. She appeared at last, bronze mask catching a flare of sunlight. Her horse was a lean chestnut, its flanks gleaming with sweat. She rode with the posture of someone born in a saddle, the kind of balance that couldn't be learned, only lived. Cole stepped out from behind the boulder, rifle raised but angled low. "You've been taking what doesn't belong to you," he called, voice echoing off stone. The masked figure pulled her horse to a halt. For a long moment, the canyon held its breath. Then she spoke, her voice muffled but clear. "I'm taking back what was stolen. By attacking wagon trains? That's not justice." "Justice?" She laughed softly. "You think men like you understand that word?" Cole felt irritation tighten his jaw. "I'm not here to argue." "Then shoot," she said simply, dismounting. "Or listen." Instead, he saw the faintest shift in her stance, a warrior's preparation. His finger brushed the trigger just as she moved. She was fast, too fast. The blade flashed in the air before his mind caught up. Cole ducked, the steel singing past his face. His rifle clattered against stone. He swung a fist, caught her shoulder, but she turned with the blow and slammed her elbow into his ribs. Pain shot through his side. They collided, boots grinding dust into the earth. She struck again, precise, controlled. This wasn't rage, it was skill, born of years surviving against impossible odds. Cole countered, grabbed her wrist, and twisted, forcing her knife downward. The edge scraped against stone as he threw his weight forward, driving her back. They fell together, grappling in the dirt. Her breath came fast, sharp through the mask. Cole pinned her arm and reached for the helmet strap. For a heartbeat, she went still, not surrendering, but waiting. Then the mask came loose. Cole froze. Beneath the bronze, her eyes burned dark and bright, fierce, unyielding, alive. Sweat streaked her face, strands of black hair clinging to her cheek. She was no ghost, no monster, no outlaw in the shape the town had imagined. She was a woman, and that truth hit harder than any blade. His grip faltered. In an instant, she rolled, reversing their positions. The knife was at his throat. "You shouldn't have seen my face," she whispered, voice raw, trembling between defiance and dread. "I had to know who you were," he said quietly. "Now you do." For a long moment, neither moved. Her breath brushed his skin, smelling of sage and smoke. The edge of the blade pressed lightly against his neck, then eased away. Before Cole could speak, the sound of approaching hoofbeats shattered the silence. Multiple riders, coming fast. Her head jerked toward the canyon mouth. "Your friends?" "Maybe," he said. "But they won't spare you." She made a decision. Grabbing his collar, she hauled him to his feet. "Run." "What?" "Run. There's a crack in the rock, move." Before he could argue, she shoved him toward a narrow split in the canyon wall. They slipped through sideways, scraping against the stone as shouts echoed behind them. Inside, the air was cool, the light dim. The crevice widened into a hidden hollow, barely big enough for both. They pressed against the rock, breathing hard as the voices outside grew louder. "Trail ends here," someone barked. "Check the gap." Cole held his breath. Beside him, the woman's hand hovered near her blade. A shadow filled the crack's entrance. A man's silhouette leaned in, squinting into darkness. Then another voice called from outside. "Tracks head north. Move!" The shadow withdrew. The noise faded. They stayed silent until only wind remained. When she finally turned toward him, Cole could see her clearly in the sliver of light, young, maybe mid-20s, her face carved by defiance and loss. "You should have handed me over," she said softly. "I should have," Cole admitted, "but I didn't." Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" He hesitated, then said the only truth he had. "Because I saw who you're fighting for." Something flickered behind her, gaze something close to pain. "They're starving," she said. "The old, the sick. The treaties promised land and rations. Then the army took the land and kept the rations." Her jaw tightened. "So I take them back." Cole leaned against the rock, silent. He'd seen those treaties too, ink promises bleeding into dust. "They'll come back," he said finally. "Then we'll move after dark." "We." The word hung between them like fragile glass. When night fell, they crawled from the cave and followed the ridge north. The stars stretched endless above them. Somewhere behind, the posse was still hunting. By dawn, they reached a dry creek bed. She stopped and turned. "Name's Naya," she said. "Cole Hart," he answered. "Don't thank me for sparing you," she said flatly. "You're still a bounty hunter." "Maybe," he said, But I'm not hunting you anymore. She didn't reply, but he saw the smallest shift in her expression, surprise, then caution. They traveled together through the canyon maze, moving by instinct and necessity. The chase turned them into reluctant allies. She knew the hidden paths. He knew how pursuers thought. By dusk, they reached a ridge overlooking the desert. Below, a line of riders combed the valley, the marshal himself among them. They won't stop, Cole said. Then we'll make them lose the trail, Naya replied. They spent the next day crossing unforgiving country ravines, dry riverbeds, and blistering flats. When they stopped at a stream to rest, Cole watched her wash the dust from her hands. In daylight, she looked younger, yet her eyes carried centuries of exhaustion. You fight like a soldier, he said. I was taught by one, she replied quietly. My father. He died believing peace could be signed on paper. Cole nodded slowly. Mine died, believing war could make him rich. Their eyes met different pasts, same ghosts. By nightfall, they reached the mountains. The air thinned, cold creeping through the rocks. They found shelter under an overhang. She sat close to the small fire, light dancing across her face. They'll paint you a traitor for helping me, she said. I've been called worse. That's not by men with rifles. He smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time someone called me right. For the first time, Naya's lips curved, not quite a smile, but something near it. Hours passed in silence. The fire shrank to embers. Outside, coyotes sang to the moon. When Cole woke before dawn, she was standing at the edge of the overhang, scanning the horizon. Her bronze mask hung from her belt, catching the faintest light. They'll reach the high ridge by midday, she said. If they find us before we cross it, we're finished. Then we cross it first. They packed quickly and mounted their horses. The climb was brutal, loose shale, thin air, and sheer drops. At one point, Cole's horse stumbled, nearly throwing him over the edge. But Naya caught his reins, anchoring him back to the trail. Don't thank me yet, she said breathlessly. Wasn't planning to. By the time they reached the ridgetop, the posse's dust trail was visible far below. Cole looked west, an open stretch of badlands, treacherous but empty. Naya pointed toward a cluster of canyons. There's a camp ahead. My people are gathering supplies. If we can reach it before sundown, we'll be safe. Safe, he repeated. You really believe that word still means something? She didn't answer. They reached the camp at dusk, a handful of makeshift tents and weary faces that greeted Naya with silent nods and guarded stares. One older man stepped forward, eyes narrowing at Cole. He's with me, Naya said. With you? The man spat. He's one of them. Not anymore. The man's glare lingered, then softened. We move tonight, he said. The marshal's closing in. They spent the night preparing, packing food, dismantling fires, tending to the wounded. Cole worked beside them, feeling eyes on his back. Trust came slow in these lands. Near midnight, he found Naya by a dying fire, staring into the coals. When this is over, he said quietly, what will you do? She didn't look at him. There's no over, Cole. Only surviving. He nodded. Then I'll survive with you. She finally met his gaze. Don't make promises you can't keep. He smiled, weary. I never do. Outside, thunder rolled across the desert, the sound of hooves, not storm clouds. The marshal's men were here. The warning came as a single whistle, sharp, low, human. Naya was on her feet before the echo faded, pulling Cole up with her. They found us, she hissed. Around them, the camp erupted into motion. Horses whinnied, children cried, and men grabbed weapons too old for another fight. The first rifle crack split the night. A bullet tore through a tent post near Cole's head. Get them out, Naya shouted to the elders. Take the north trail, go. She turned to Cole, eyes fierce in the firelight. We hold them here. Cole snatched his rifle, checking the chamber. We'll never hold them long. Long enough. They took position behind a stack of crates at the canyon's mouth. The moon hung white and pitiless above, revealing everything, no shadows to hide in, no mercy in the open sky. The first wave came fast. Marshal Everett's men, 15 riders, their coats glinting with badges. Cole fired first, his bullet clipping a man's shoulder and spinning him from the saddle. Naya's shot came half a heartbeat later, dropping another rider clean. Smoke filled the air. Horses screamed. The smell of gunpowder and sweat and fear tangled together. Cole reloaded, teeth gritted. You ever get tired of being hunted? Naya fired again, the recoil kicking against her shoulder. You ever get tired of running from yourself? He almost laughed. Almost. More riders poured in, pushing through the narrow defile. Naya threw a flash bomb, an old cavalry trick, bright as lightning. The attackers flinched, blinded. Cole used the opening to grab her arm. We can't stay. Too many. She hesitated. Her people were still escaping into the dark. Go, he urged. I'll cover. She shook her head. Not this time. They fell back together, retreating through the maze of rocks and shallow caves. The night turned into a blur of gunfire and echoes. At one point, a bullet grazed Cole's side, heat blooming across his ribs. Naya ripped a strip from her sleeve and pressed it against the wound without slowing. Keep moving, she ordered. They ran until the shots faded, replaced by the distant clang of horseshoes. When they finally stopped, the canyon floor was littered with embers, remnants of the camp, glowing like dying stars. Cole leaned against a boulder, chest heaving. You can still make it. Take the ridge. I'll draw them off. Naya glared at him. And die doing it? That's your plan? It's a good one. No, you saved them. You stay alive long enough to see it matter. Before he could answer, movement stirred in the shadows, 3 silhouettes, rifles drawn. Too close for retreat. Cole raised his weapon, but Naya pushed him aside and rolled. Firing twice, 2 men dropped. The third fled into darkness. Cole caught her arm, pulling her to her feet. You just made yourself their top priority. I already was. They pressed deeper into the canyon, following a dry stream that wound north. The path narrowed until they had to crawl beneath overhangs of shale. Finally, it opened into a hidden basin where a single tree stood against the stars. This place, Naya whispered, was my father's. Cole looked around, broken pottery half buried in sand, a rusted rifle leaning against stone. He fought here? He died here, she said quietly. Protecting families they were relocating. He sent me away that night. I was 14. Cole exhaled. You've been fighting ever since. Naya nodded, eyes distant. I thought if I kept taking back what they stole, maybe the land would remember his name. Silence stretched between them, heavy with ghosts. Then Cole said, You did more than remember. You made them fear it. For the first time, she smiled. A small, painful thing. They didn't rest long. The marshal's men would regroup. By dawn, they were back on horseback, heading toward the high ridges. Below them, the desert burned gold, stretching endless and merciless. As the sun rose higher, Cole noticed something, a dust trail behind them. Too faint for accident. He frowned. We're being followed. Naya turned, squinting. Not the marshal. That's Apache formation. Your people? Maybe. Maybe not. They rode faster, cutting through ravines and spiny brush. Hours later, they reached a narrow saddle between peaks. The riders behind them were gaining. Cole's horse stumbled, nearly going down. He swore, catching the reins. We won't outrun them. Then we find out who they are, Naya said, drawing her rifle. When the riders crested the ridge, Cole recognized the man at their lead, broad-shouldered, with weathered skin and a rifle slung like part of his body. Naya, he called. Drop your weapon. She froze. Dakota, she murmured. Cole tensed. Friend of yours? Used to be. And Dakota rode closer, expression grim. You brought one of them here? After everything we lost? He helped me, Naya said. He helped himself. Dakota's voice hardened. Do you know what they're saying in the camps? That you betrayed us for a white man's cause. That's a lie, she snapped. Everything I've done was for us. Then prove it, Dakota said, raising his rifle. By finishing what you started without him. Naya stepped forward, fury trembling through her. You think this war is pure? That blood makes borders? I've seen what they do to our children. You think color decides who bleeds? Cole's hand drifted toward his revolver, but Naya caught his wrist. Don't, she whispered. For a moment, Dakota just looked at her, then lowered the gun. You're lost, he said. And when you fall, No one will bury you." He turned his horse, signaling the others to leave. Dust swallowed them. Naya's shoulders sagged. "He was like a brother once." "Ugh." Cole looked at her quietly. "He still is. He's just standing where you used to." That night, they camped high in the mountains, the wind whispering like distant voices. Cole sat beside the small fire, watching her sharpen her blade. "You know," he said softly, "every man chasing you believes they're right." "And are you one of them?" she asked without looking up. "I was. Now I just believe in you." Her hand stilled. "That's dangerous. Everything worth believing in is—" The silence that followed was charged, not just with tension, but something alive, something fragile. Then came another sound, hooves, distant but unmistakable. Naya extinguished the fire with a handful of dirt. They listened. "Too few for soldiers," Cole murmured. "Or too smart," she said. A moment later, a lone figure emerged from the dark, a woman, older, silver streaks in her hair. She carried a torch. "Naya," she called softly. "It's me." Naya froze. "Nael." Cole watched the two women regard each other warily. "I came to warn you," Nael said. "The marshal has blocked every pass. You won't reach the high country before sunrise." "Then what?" Naya demanded. "There's an old mining road through the cliffs. Dangerous, but open for now." "Why help me?" "Because I remember your father," Nael said. "And because I'm tired of burying children." Naya's voice softened. "Then guide us." The three of them rode through the dark, following the ghost road. The cliffs rose sheer on either side, moonlight carving silver veins in the stone. Cole's horse stumbled more than once. Nael moved like someone who'd memorized the mountain. By dawn, they reached the far ridge. Below lay a wide valley, threaded with rivers and smoke from distant fires. "That's the gathering," Nael said. "Your people. But the marshal knows too. He's setting a trap." Naya turned to her. "Then we change the bait." Nael looked between them. "You mean him?" Cole met her gaze. "She's right. They'll follow me if they think I have her." "No," Naya said sharply. "You'll die. I'll buy you time." Nael studied him a moment. "He's not wrong." Naya's hand clenched into a fist. "I won't let him." Cole caught her shoulder. "You already have. You gave me something worth dying for." Tears shimmered in her eyes, furious and unfallen. "Then don't die for it. Live." He smiled faintly. "That's the hard part." Before he could say more, Nael pointed east. Dust trails, dozens of riders cresting the horizon. "They found us." Naya looked at Cole, every word trembling with urgency. "Then you run south. Make noise. Leave tracks. I'll head north with the others." Cole hesitated, then nodded. 3 days, he said. "Give me 3 days to lead them off." She reached for his hand, pressing something small into his palm, a carved stone bird, worn smooth. "So you remember what you're fighting for." He looked down at it. "I won't forget." Their eyes met one last time. Then Cole turned his horse south and spurred hard, the bronze mask tied to his saddle flashing in the sun like a beacon of defiance. Behind him, the marshal's army thundered into pursuit. For 3 days, the desert became a war between dust and breath. Cole Hart rode as if chased by ghosts, which, in truth, he was. The marshal's men followed like wolves, relentless and organized, sweeping every canyon and ridge. He left false trails, doublebacks, and campfires he never used. But exhaustion was catching up. His horse's stride faltered, its breathing ragged in the heat. On the 4th morning, the desert gave him nothing, no shade, no mercy. His canteen ran dry by noon. Behind him, he could see their dust again, faint, but closing. The marshal knew he was weakening. Cole guided the horse into a ravine littered with broken stone and twisted mesquite. He dismounted, limping from the saddle, every step an argument against gravity. The bronze mask still hung from the pommel, a symbol that shouted louder than his gun ever could. He thought of Naya's words. "Don't die for it. Live." He smiled grimly. "Still trying," he muttered. The first shot cracked the air, ricocheting off rock inches from his head. Cole dropped behind a boulder, returning fire. The echo rolled through the canyon like thunder. A bullet grazed his arm, another shattered stone above him. He was pinned. Then distant at first came another sound. Hoofbeats. Not from behind, but ahead. He risked a glance. Riders. At least a dozen, charging out of the glare bows raised, dust swirling like smoke. For a heartbeat, Cole thought the desert itself had decided to avenge him. Then he saw her. Naya, leading the charge, face uncovered, hair streaming like black fire. The marshal's men turned in panic, their formation shattering. Cole staggered to his feet, firing until his rifle clicked empty. Then strong hands gripped his arm, Naya, pulling him onto her horse. "You came back," he gasped. "Did you really think I'd let you die alone?" She shot back, spurring the horse forward. They rode hard, weaving through gunfire as Apache riders cut through the marshal's line. Arrows hissed, bullets sang. The canyon roared with chaos. Cole clung to Naya as the horse leapt a low ridge, hooves pounding like drumbeats. By dusk, it was over. Smoke hung low in the cooling air. The surviving marshal's men had fled south, their trail lost in the gathering dark. Cole and Naya dismounted near a shallow stream, the same one they'd once hidden beside. He sat heavily on a rock, blood drying on his sleeve. "You shouldn't have come, and you shouldn't have promised," she said, voice trembling between anger and relief. "But you did both anyway." Cole looked at her, dust in her hair, blood on her cheek, eyes fierce and alive. "You said live," he whispered. "So I did." For a long moment, neither spoke. The desert seemed to hold its breath. Then Naya crossed the distance between them and kissed him slow, certain, final. That night, under a sky littered with stars, they buried the fallen. The Apache warriors sang low, the rhythm ancient, carrying both mourning and defiance. When the fires dimmed, the council elder, an old woman with eyes like polished obsidian, approached them. "You bought us time," she said to Cole, "and you bled for it. That makes you one of us." Cole shook his head. "I'm no warrior." The old woman smiled faintly. "No, you're something rarer. A man who learns." "One." Naya stood beside him, her hand brushing his. "Stay," she said simply. He looked around the camp, alive with quiet motion. Children laughing despite the smoke, women tending fires, men repairing saddles, life stubbornly refusing to die. He thought of the badge he'd thrown away, the trails he'd walked alone, the endless miles that never led home. "I'll stay," he said. "If you'll have me." Naya's eyes softened. "Then learn our ways. Fight when we fight. Rest when we rest. And never wear that mask again." Cole glanced at the bronze faceplate lying near the fire, its surface cracked, the desert wind sighing through the empty eyes. He tossed it into the flames. The metal hissed once, then went still. Above them, the stars burned cold and bright, indifferent and eternal. Yet for the first time, Cole Hart didn't feel small beneath them. He felt finally anchored. He reached for Naya's hand. "We'll build something here," he said. "Something that lasts." Her fingers closed around his. "Then let it be worth the fight." They stood together, watching the fire consume the mask, its reflection dancing across their faces. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the marshal was regrouping. Another fight would come, but for now, there was quiet enough to breathe, enough to begin again. 6 months later, the canyon bloomed with spring. The air smelled of sage and pine sap. Wildflowers dared to rise where bullets once fell. Cole Hart stood on the same ridge where he'd nearly died, a scar of land beneath a sky too blue to forgive. From here he could see the valley stretching out like a promise. Gardens where there had been dust. Smoke rising from cook fires instead of gunfire. Behind him, the settlement pulsed with life. Men were shaping lumber into homes. Children raced between the corral fences, and women hung hides to dry in the soft wind. The Apache called the place Tsila, rebirth. Cole called it home. Naya approached quietly, her shadow joining his. She wore no weapons today, just a simple woven shawl and the feathered charm of her father at her throat. "You still don't like resting," she teased gently. He smiled, lines deepening at the corners of his eyes. "I never learned how." "You've got time now," she said. "Time to unlearn a few things." They stood together, shoulder to shoulder, looking out at the world they'd refused to let die. For a moment, silence was enough. Finally, Cole said, "When I met you, I thought strength was how hard a man could hit. Naya tilted her head. And now? He looked down at her, eyes soft with something steadier than passion, respect. Now I know strength is how long you can keep standing when everything tells you to fall. A slow smile touched her lips. Then stand with me, Cole Hart. Because the world's not done trying to knock us down. He reached for her hand. I plan to. Below them, a child's laughter broke across the canyon like sunlight. The old wounds of the land were healing, even if the scars never truly faded. Cole watched the people, their people working, building, daring to live without fear. He thought of the badge he once wore, the mask he'd burned, the desert that had nearly swallowed him whole. Worth it, he murmured. Naya glanced at him. What was? All of it. The wind swept through the canyon, carrying the scent of dust, sage, and the first green shoots of spring. And for the first time in a lifetime spent chasing ghosts, Cole Hart didn't feel like he was running. He was home.